The plastic bag, hanging upside down from a tree branch, was the only thing left behind after Eli Mercer vanished without a trace in the stillness of the forest. On October 17th, 2021, Eli Mercer, a 34-year-old freelance sound engineer, left his small apartment in Eugene, Oregon, carrying a lightweight backpack, an old paper map, and his field recording gear. He intended to spend the weekend at Redwood Lake, a place that had often given him the peace he needed to reset his mind, but this time, he didn't come back. 2 days later, a park ranger found his gray pickup truck parked quietly in the northern lot near the lake. The engine was cold. His phone had been left in the glove compartment. There was no signal, no signs of where he had gone. Roughly 700 meters away, close to the lakeshore, was a modest campsite. The tent had been folded, the camping stove still unused, and his tools neatly packed as if he had been preparing to leave. But Eli wasn't there. There were no footprints, no drag marks, no blood, nothing at all except for a single plastic bag hanging upside down from a branch, like a cryptic sign left behind for someone or a quiet warning. There were no security cameras in the protected area. No hikers remembered seeing Eli after that morning, and the last activity from his phone showed that he opened a digital map of the lake at 10:14 a.m. after that. The signal disappeared completely. What troubled the search and rescue team the most wasn't just that Eli couldn't be found, it was that they had no idea where to begin. Eli Mercer wasn't the kind of person people worried about. He lived quietly in a second-floor apartment overlooking the train tracks in South Eugene, a neighborhood of weathered brick buildings tucked between student cafes and bike shops. Neighbors called him the sound guy, a man with ears so sharp. He once helped locate a leak in someone's plumbing just by standing still and listening. Eli was a freelance sound engineer, specializing in post-production for indie films and video games, a job that required patience, intense focus, and a certain obsession with detail. He often worked late into the night, wearing closed-back studio headphones, living almost entirely inside his own world of sound, among friends. Eli was known for always being on time, for sharing strange music links no one had ever heard of, and for occasionally disappearing for days just to go listen to the woods. Some people travel to escape. Eli traveled to return to himself. Redwood Lake, where he would eventually vanish, wasn't new to him. He had visited 3 times over the past 2 years, capturing the subtle slap of small waves against stone, the whisper of old pine trees, even the snap of dry branches as forest creatures passed through. He once said, "Every place has its own frequency. If you're quiet enough, you can hear it," in a brief conversation with his closest friend, Jonas. Eli mentioned a personal project, something he called a sonic archive of forgotten places. Jonas didn't press for details. He knew Eli didn't explain much, but starting that September, something about Eli began to shift. He wasn't negative or withdrawn, just quieter. He pulled out of a few contracts, declined new ones despite a tight budget. He cleared off his balcony, once home to potted plants and a DIY antenna, and replaced everything with a single folding chair. Rhea, Eli's ex-girlfriend, said he started sending her strange, short messages, repeating odd images like "the sky is very blue. Do you hear anything?" and, most notably, "if anyone asks, tell them I went toward the wind," to her. It felt like a hidden distress signal wrapped in calm, but she wasn't sure. With Eli, everything could be a metaphor or simply sound. 3 weeks before the trip, Eli visited an old bookstore on Olive Street, asking specifically for paper topographic maps, a rare request in the age of GPS. He chose a 1998 print of the Redwood Preserve, an outdated map, missing new trail markers and modern danger zones. The clerk recalled Eli flipping through it, then muttering softly, "This one still has mistakes, which is exactly what I need." He paid in cash and left without another word. His financial records showed nothing unusual in those final days, except for one purchase, a 20-meter rescue-grade paracord, bought at an outdoor gear shop in Springfield. Along with it, he picked up a headlamp, spare batteries, and 6 bottles of water, no food, no first aid kit. The gear was both minimal and oddly specific, like someone preparing for a journey they didn't intend to return from. the night before he disappeared. The downstairs neighbors heard footsteps pacing back and forth above them, furniture being dragged, doors opening and shutting, but no voices, no music, no other presence. When investigators later searched the apartment, nothing seemed disturbed, except for one thing. On his desk sat a field microphone, typically used for remote sound capture, but its cable had been removed and coiled neatly, as if Eli had no intention of using it again. Jonas recalled Eli once asking a strange question. "Do you think a place can hold sound, not recording sexual sound, like, as if people who were once there never really left?" When Jonas laughed and said, "You mean like ghosts?" Eli had only smiled. He didn't say no. That Friday night, Eli visited a small bar called Monarch, his usual end-of-month ritual. No one remembered him drinking, no long conversations, but the bartender distinctly recalled him leaving behind a slim black notebook, sticky with pine resin. Inside were cryptic symbols patterns that looked like audio codes, frequency maps of wind, water, ambient tones. One line was underlined multiple times. Low frequency 4749 Hz. Does it replicate non-existent sound? No one understood what it meant. But to Eli, it seemed like a clue pointing towards something beyond normal analysis. The next morning, a gas station camera about 12 miles from the preserve captured Eli's truck. He filled the tank, paid with a card, and drove off alone. Black jacket, old baseball cap, compact backpack. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. When the vehicle was found 2 days later, nothing seemed out of place, except for one detail. The driver's seat had been pushed noticeably forward, as if someone smaller had sat there. Former colleagues described Eli as someone who could lose himself in his work, spending hours adjusting the sound of a single footstep on snow until it felt right. He didn't need people. He needed space to listen, but that isolation, while never alarming, made those close to him worry. Not because he was unstable, but because he was the kind of person who could fade so deeply into stillness no one would notice he was gone. After his disappearance made the news, a few people claimed to have seen him in the woods that October. A couple reported spotting a man in a black jacket sitting by the lake with a recording device. He didn't look up, didn't react. Another hiker swore he heard whistling at 3 a.m., not bird song, but a rhythm like someone calling out. No confirmation ever came. And no cameras recorded anything but trees, fog, and silence. Eli Mercer didn't vanish in a crowd. He vanished into nature, where every sound is absorbed by the trees, and every cry for help, if there was one, disappears into an echo with no answer. On the afternoon of October 19th, 3 park rangers patrolling the edge of Redwood Lake took note of a silver-gray pickup truck parked at Lot 3, an area few campers used due to its lack of clear trails to the lake. The vehicle was lightly dusted, clearly unmoved for hours. It had Oregon plates but no visible day pass sticker. As they approached, they noticed the interior was silent. The driver's seat was empty, dome lights off. A cold coffee cup rested in the console holder. The cap on a water bottle had been left loosely twisted. When they opened the door, they found Eli Mercer's phone inside the glove compartment. Locked, no visible damage, no signs of tampering. Roughly 700 meters away, in a shallow clearing near the lakeshore damp ground, no shade, a spot almost no one chose to camp, they found a folded tent frame, a small unused gas stove still in its bag, a few drawstrings, and a pair of rubber sandals neatly aligned. But there were no clear footprints. The grass was barely compressed, as if whoever had been there had barely moved. One detail baffled the rangers, a black plastic bag hanging upside down from a branch 2 meters off the ground. It held nothing. It wasn't trash. It wasn't food storage. It simply hung there, gently shifting with the breeze. The branch was not easy to reach. There were no low limbs nearby, no easy footholds. Hanging it there would have required a polier climbing gear. Ron Kendrick, a veteran ranger, felt something wasn't right. He'd seen odd campsites before, people setting up in storms, placing food near wildlife, even using stuffed animals as TikTok bait, but no one hung a plastic bag upside down in a remote clearing, for no reason. He ordered the team to halt the patrol and begin a perimeter search. When they radioed in, no one at HQ even knew someone was missing. No report, No calls, no alerts. No one yet realized that a man named Eli Mercer had walked into the woods and never walked back out. 2 hours later, light rain began to fall. The team returned to the site with a field camera and gear for logging evidence. They documented the bag, rechecked the tent. The sleeping bag inside was still dry. At the bottom of Eli's backpack, they found a dark leather notebook. Every page was blank except the last, which read, "I can't hear anything anymore." By morning, Redwood Lake was blanketed in fog and steady drizzle. The Rangers submitted their initial findings to the Lane County Search and Rescue Division, but with no confirmed identity, the case wasn't yet classified as urgent. The first breakthrough came from a gas station 12 miles south of the preserve. A clerk recognized the truck from security footage, confirming Eli had filled up the tank on the morning of October 17th. 3 days had passed. The license plate led police to a name Eli Mercer, Eugene, Oregon. They called the number listed on his vehicle registration. No answer. They tried again that afternoon. Still nothing. At 4:00 p.m. on October 20th, an officer visited Ellis' apartment. The door was locked. No sounds inside. Neighbors said they hadn't seen him since Friday. They described Eli as quiet, polite, rarely outside. One elderly woman on the ground floor remembered seeing him that morning, loading his backpack into the truck. He bowed slightly and said, "Quiet weekend. I hope." That was the last time she saw him. Police contacted Jonas Ellis' closest friend, and the only person he'd regularly called over the last 30 days, when he got the call. Jonas was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I'm not surprised, but am afraid I was right." Jonas drove overnight from Portland to Redwood Lake, bringing with him the last audio file Eli had ever sent. It was nearly 8 minutes of wind high-pitched, steady, almost unnatural, no tonal shift, no rustle of leaves, just wind. So unrelenting it chilled the listener. He told me the wind wasn't normal. Jonas said, "It didn't pass through. It stayed, like it was waiting." By the time he arrived, search efforts had expanded. One new clue was discovered: a silver blue paracord, over 3 meters long, cut cleanly and left near a slick. Mossy boulder about 400 meters from the campsite. It wasn't tied to anything. One end was frayed and muddy, as if it had once been pulled tight and snapped. Investigators couldn't determine if it indicated an accident or intent, but Ron Kendrick believed it was the first real sign that Eli hadn't just vanished. He may have fallen somewhere as night fell. The search team struggled for a next move. No footprints led away from the site, no cell signal, no GPS ping. Then, just as they considered pausing due to worsening weather, a young volunteer found something lodged between rocks near a stream, a small towel, caked in mud and folded neatly. On its hem, stitched in faint thread, was a sequence of numbers 3 to 7195. The number wasn't extraordinary, but its presence was no brand, no label, just those digits. Someone guessed it might be a personal ID or random embroidery, but Jonas froze when he saw it. It was Eli's towel, part of his camping gear for over 5 years, and it should have been in the truck. The search team returned to the vehicle. They combed through every compartment, every pocket. No towel. But in the backpack, they found a toiletry kit complete with toothpaste, comb, razor, and an empty slot, tailored exactly for a towel that size, somehow. The towel had left the truck, crossed rough terrain, been folded and left behind. This shattered the idea that Eli had slipped and fallen. The towel was found nearly 1.5 kilometers from camp, uphill, beyond loose rock and minimal cover, not the path of someone wandering accidentally. Kendrick proposed a new theory Eli had left on purpose. But why phone data was decrypted 4 days after his disappearance? The last screen activation was at 10:14 a.m. on October 17, just minutes after entering the park. After that, nothing. No apps opened, no photos taken, no memos. For someone who meticulously documented everything, especially sound, it was deeply uncharacteristic. Eli never went anywhere without recording. Jonas confirmed, even the grocery store. The investigation split along 2 paths. 1, that Eli had fallen into treacherous terrain. 2, that he had deliberately erased his digital trail-choosing silence, but his reasons remained unknown. There was no note, no warning, no indication of what he was thinking when he stepped into the trees. That evening, a new report arrived from a hobbyist photographer who had hiked near the lake on October 18th. He'd used a film camera to capture the landscape from a ridge about 2 kilometers from the campsite. In one frame, at the edge of the blurred tree line, stood a dark figure back turned, near the cliff's edge, no face, no motion. The timestamp was unreliable, but everyone agreed. It was likely the first and the last image of Eli Mercer, alive, on the Friday night after Eli was reported missing. Search teams received an unexpected call from a man named Travis Cole, living about 11 miles from the park. He said that on the night of October 17th, the night Eli disappeared, he saw the beam of a flashlight slowly moving behind the trees near the forest edge, close to the old power station road. According to Travis, it wasn't the quick sweep of a car or camper's lantern, but a solitary, dim glow that paused, then moved again in short bursts, as if the person carrying it stopped at intervals. His dog barked furiously at midnight, unusual for it, but when he stepped outside, all he saw was tree shadows and light rain. He assumed it was a hunter or trespasser and didn't report it. Investigators immediately searched the power station site, abandoned since a landslide in 2006. They found no fresh footprints, but they did see a solitary depression in the dry mud near the station door, like someone had paused there. They also discovered a narrow strip of tarp, cut and tied into a loop, hanging from a low tree branch, swaying in the breeze. The tarp was gray-silver, matching the paracord found earlier, but came with no other items. The next day, geology student volunteer Melia linked an odd note in one of Elise's files to this area. Inside Ellis Audio backup on his laptop, she found a hidden file named Silence. Wave 47, seconds of silence that, when analyzed, revealed a low-frequency oscillation. It matched the natural resonance frequencies once recorded inside hidden cave systems west of the lake, the same caves once used as winter shelters by native tribes. None of the records showed Eli ever visited that site, but the idea that he might have been drawn into ancient underground caverns by sonic resonance began to take hold. Jonas reacted with a single thought: if he followed that sound, nobody would ever catch up. On the 8th day after Eli vanished, an elderly woman named Harriet Barnes called the team through the park hotline. Living in Vida, about 30 miles east, she said she was sure she saw Eli on the afternoon of October. 18 one day after he was officially missing, she described a thin man in a black jacket, beige cap, walking along a dirt road toward Windham Hill, the sort of quiet path no one usually took. She remembered him clearly because he was barefoot, and she thought to herself that he looked like someone emerging from deep in the forest. Harriet's sighting instantly sparked debate if it truly was Eli. It would challenge the theory that he disappeared on the 17th. One ranger dismissed it as implausible. Walking from Redwood Lake to Vida through forest in under 24 hours, nearly impossible. But Jonas wasn't ready to rule it out. He reminded them that Eli had once walked 20 miles overnight. Guided only by sound, he used to say, "If your hearing is sharp enough, you don't need your eyes." To verify Harriet's account, investigators reviewed footage from a small farm security camera near Windham Hill. Their footage showed a figure stepping into frame at 5:42 p.m. on October 18. Photo grainy, lighting poor. But the posture and stride matched Ellis' build. The figure was wearing socks, no shoes, and moving briskly. The discovery prompted search teams to expand eastward, a direction not previously planned. But that new route conflicted with the earlier resonance theory if Eli headed east to Vida. How could he also have been led west into cave systems, unless something in that forest made him change course, or unless someone else, carrying a backpack and recording gear, was walking in Elijah's footsteps? This planted the first question: had Eli traveled alone? No one had verified the gas station or park cameras to confirm he was truly on his own. That evening, Jonas found an old message from Eli. "If you walk with someone, it's someone not everyone can hear." Once thought a whimsical phrase, now it seemed chillingly prophetic, and possibly a warning spoken in his own coded language. 3 days after Harriet's sighting, investigators received another call. This time from Lester Minha, reclusive neighbor from Ellis' old ground floor apartment in South Eugene. He reported something that had haunted him for months. Around June, Lester started hearing repetitive rustling sounds, like cloth flipping in the wind from Ellis' apartment at exactly 3 a.m., lasting exactly 47 seconds each time. Lester thought Eli was practicing sound editing, but by the fifth night, he felt unease. No one repeats a sound pattern that obsessively unless they're well. Obsessing, he said. Later, Lester recalled speaking to Eli once during a water outage. Eli offered him a bottle of water and said, "I figured you'd hear the crack before it breaks." At the time, it had sounded considerate. Now, Lester feared it was an eerie clue hearing something strange before disaster struck. Investigators also uncovered a little-known habit of Ellis. He used offline mapping to mark absolute silence points places with no phone signal, no radio, and most importantly, no human noise. He'd marked nearly 19 such spots in red, and just one, in black, the cave site west of the lake, the same area tied to residence data. Jonas said Eli had never mentioned that spot to him. That same evening, Melia, still working through Ellis, Phyllis sent the team an unsent draft email from Eli. Not all silences are empty. Some places are silent because they're holding something. The moment crystallized the team's realization Eli hadn't gotten lost. He hadn't fallen or been taken. He'd chosen to follow something he believed was there something he needed to hear. But if he followed it what? Or who was waiting at the end of that silence a week after uncovering the absolute silence map clue? The search team decided to expand into the rock cave area west of Redwood Lake, an area no one had attempted due to treacherous terrain and lack of safe access, with park rangers' approval. Jonas led the first expedition. They climbed sheer, slick rock faces, using old anchor ropes that, according to local records, had been left behind from a limestone survey nearly 20 years ago. Approaching the first cave entrance, an opening nearly 10 meters deep, concealed behind ferns, they found a fresh indentation in the soft earth at the entrance. Whatever or whoever had been there had been very recent. Nearby, a silver fragment gleamed under flashlight, part of a broken headphone, exactly the type Eli had used in his field recordings. Next to it lay a short piece of twisted copper wire, not particularly valuable, but highly characteristic of the low-frequency custom gear Eli once made. In that moment, Jonas knew without doubt Eli had been here. As the team returned to base to reassess their findings, a rescue coordinator received an email from a man named Miles Key, claiming to have information on Eli, a former college classmate of Eli's. Miles requested an in-person meeting. They agreed to meet at a small cafe in Junction City, where Miles was staying while revisiting old memories. Local police quietly monitored the meeting. Miles arrived half an hour late, thin, with close-cropped hair and clear-framed glasses. He sat down without greeting, placing a worn leather notebook on the table. Eli struggled with sleepy, "You know that," he said flatly. Before Jonas could respond, Miles flipped to the middle of the notebook, revealing messy notes in both their handwriting labeled "Listen Test Day 9" and phrases like "Gain at 20 dB, begin echo from rock, sub 50 Hertz, layer, Shujarish waveform, distortion." The layout matched notes seen in Ellis' own pages. When asked how he came to have these notes, Miles replied, "Because I was the first to listen with him. We called it the ninth tone." There was something unsettling in his calm tone, no fear, no doubt, only unwavering conviction in something unnameable. Jonas felt something in the air shift. Miles spoke of Eli in the present tense, as if his friend had never disappeared. He always believed there were sound layers humans couldn't hear. But our brains still register. Those waves linger in rock, in water, in sleep. His words were measured, but carried the weight of someone who'd waited years to say them. Jonas finally asked, "When was the last time you saw Eli?" Miles paused, took a sip of water, then answered, "We didn't meet. We agreed not to. Because if we both heard it, neither of us might return." The phrasing was chilling, not the content, but the certainty behind it. Police immediately sought a warrant to search Miles' temporary lodging. Inside, authorities found a map of the Redwood Lake region nearly identical to the 1998 map Eli purchased, but annotated with strange symbols, concentric circles, dashed lines between high points, and notably, a small triangle marking the western cave entrance. A handwritten note scrawled on it read, "Deep enough frequency, Churchnote, no door." Investigators also seized his computer. The hard drive contained numerous FLAC format sound files, some named similarly to files in Ellis' backup folder. However, there was no evidence showing Miles had met Elias after 2018, the time they both dropped out of a university sound lab project they called the Listen Test. Miles had been asked to leave that lab for allegedly tampering with equipment after becoming obsessed with feedback sounds that have no source. Police pressed, "Do you know where Eli is?" Miles answered quietly. "No, but I think he reached the place where waves take form. It's no longer sounded structure to any outsider." His answer sounded vague, but to Jonas, it was a phrase that cut him deep because Eli had once said, "During a night in the woods, sound is the original structure before form. If you listen deeply enough, you'll see it." The coincidences were no longer random, but police still had no case to detain Miles. He left the station uncharged that night, before walking away. He turned to Jonas and said, "I'm not the last person who heard Elibet. I'm the only one who knows where that sound leads." His parting words left Jonas unsettled. That night, Jonas returned to Ellis' apartment still untouched. He opened Ellis' laptop and, for the first time, accessed a folder titled "Not for Sharing." Inside was a single 58-second voice memo recorded by Eli himself, labored breathing, fabric rustling, and one whispered sentence, spoken slowly. "If you hear this, you'll understand why I can't come back." No date, no location, just a voice emerging from ambiguity, as though from deep underground. Jonas brought this clip to investigators. Acoustic engineers analyzed the background, echo patterns, and frequency resonance. They concluded the recording wasn't from open air. The echo characteristics suggested a cold, damp environment consistent with a cave. But then came the most startling discovery hidden beneath the frequencies. Software revealed a second, ultra-low oscillation, continuous and barely perceptible. One sound specialist described it as metal vibrating, not from external force, but compressing itself. The analysis remains classified, but Jonas hasn't slept in 3 nights. He rifled through old gearboxes from their college days and found an olive green notebook used for their early silence mapping project. Each symbol represented a different type of silence, natural, deafening, aquatic, on the final page. Jonas had sketched a symbol he recognized, with the note, "Ellis silence not passive, not empty, but aware." Then it struck him perhaps Eli didn't run away, or get lost, or get captured, but followed his own echo-ive self. A journey into the deepest sound layer, where noise isn't external, but internal, something waiting to be discovered from within. If Eli reached that place, no one could have brought him back. On the 20th day after Eli disappeared, the search operation at Redwood Lake was officially called off. A few volunteers remained, but there was no funding or mandate to continue looking for someone who may have chosen to leave the preserve. The Oregon Forestry Department's report concluded bluntly, no signs of criminal activity, no evidence of an accident, and no valid reason to presume the missing person requires emergency rescue. What began as a mysterious disappearance became classified as one of a man choosing to disconnect from society. Jonas read the report in his car outside the police station, feeling the first real sense of abandonment not by Eli, but by the system built to find lost people. Every blurred lead he had followed, every hope he had clung to, was now marked insufficiently verified. He remembered Ellis' words from a first forest hike. "The forest doesn't care who's right. The forest keeps the silent ones." That night, Jonas returned to Redwood Lake alone. He camped by the cave entrance, the place where they'd found Ellis' broken headphones. No phone reception, no company. He brought only an old recording mic from their student days, intending to listen, the next morning. He replayed the recording, for hours, just the wind. Then, precisely at 4:19 a.m., a faint rhythm emerged sound, like footsteps on moist ground. Jonas slowed and isolated the sound. It wasn't footsteps, it was tapping. 3 throbs, pause. 2 throbs, silence. Knocking is a signal rescue codes, use that pattern sometimes. Jonas took the clip to the Rangers. They didn't accuse him of imagination, but had no grounds to reopen the case. The official file was closed that night. Jonas couldn't breathe, not because of Ella, but because of the question taking root inside him if Eli had wanted to be found. Would he have left that knock, or was Jonas hearing what he desperately needed to hear a week later? After the case closed, Rhea, Ella's ex-girlfriend, emailed Jonas a photo. No greeting, no subject. Just a crumpled scrap of paper reading, "If anyone asks. Tell them I went toward the wind." The same line Eli had texted her, except now it was handwritten, and on the back was the faint logo of the print shop near the university where Ella worked part-time. Jonas asked Rhea why she kept it so long, on a voice message. Her voice cracked. "He never gave it to me. Someone dropped it in my mailbox 3 days ago. If Eli was alive, why not reach out? If someone else was writing an Ellis, hand why do it now? And why those words?" Meanwhile, Miles was summoned again, but this time he barely cooperated. His parting words were cryptic. He didn't disappear. He's filtering out the final sound. The state asked him to leave Oregon pending further review. Jonas fell apart under doubt. One night, he replayed every old sound file from Eli, a familiar clip of rain-soaked forest, Eli and Jonas walking, boots crunching mud. But this time, he noticed an unfamiliar laugh at 47 seconds, a cold, hollow laughter. Not a liss. He sent it for voice analysis. The result chilled him. The laugh didn't match any known voice, and the ambient frequency, the silence beneath the forest, mirrored the earlier 32 knock he recorded near the cave. Jonas began to suspect the unspoken truth. Eli may not have gone alone, or worse, he might never have been in charge of this journey. 3 days later, Amelia called, trembling. "Remember that silver cord at the stream?" She said she misread it. Close-up photos showed the cord hadn't been cute. It had been untied, purposefully undone. That revelation unraveled everything. If the cord wasn't accidentally cut, someone or Ellie had untied it deliberately in treacherous terrain. But why? And if Eli wasn't using it for safety? How did he reach the cave so precariously? Jonas returned to the site with 2 former search members. Following a faint scrape along a rock ledge, they discovered a cracked boulder wedged with a small metal device, a tiny lapel audio recorder from 2013, the casing cracked but the memory card intact. When they played the single file on it, the lab fell silent. No voice, no cries. Just a repeating 47 Hz tone, lasting exactly 4 minutes and 19 seconds, matching Jonas' knock recording. And at the very end, a faint click, the sound of the device being remotely turned off. No one was nearby, no signals, no physical connection. Jonas sat back, stunned. If no one switched it off, who did? Who had placed the device? Who was watching? Everything he believed in collapsed. The theories of accident, voluntary silence, and self-guided pursuit all blurred into a haze. Or, chillingly, all true at once, as if an unseen orchestration, something not human. But intentional was directing it all from the shadows. On his final night at Redwood, Jonas didn't return hoping for Eli anymore. He just prayed he wouldn't hear anything, because if a sound came again, he knew he might never have the courage to come back. On November 15th, nearly a month after Eli Mercer was officially declared missing, the case was archived under the category Closed Unresolved. No body, no crime, no suspects, no indication whether he was alive or dead, but buried deep within the 200-page report. There was one line that made readers pause. The possibility cannot be ruled out that the missing individual intentionally entered hazardous terrain for an undisclosed personal reason. Jonas sat in Ella's vacant apartment, staring out through the window as the last light of fall faded from the sky. Everything remained exactly as Eli had left it: the audio workstation, the unplugged microphone, the half-filled journal, the book lying face down on the floor. No one had moved in. No one dared to clean it out. The apartment had become a resonance chamber, not holding a person, only holding sound. Jonas no longer searched, but sometimes at night, he would still turn on the recording equipment and let it run in silence, not to find Eli, but to listen for whatever might remain after everything else had fallen away. Once, during one of those nights. He dreamed, or thought he dreamed, of Eli sitting by the lake. He didn't speak, didn't move. His face was obscured by the shimmer of light on the water. He wasn't older, he wasn't different, just so silent that even the air around him seemed to hold its breath. No one truly knows what happened. Some believe Eli slipped and was carried off by water. Others suggest he joined an off-grid community, choosing to vanish. And then there are people like Miles, who believe Eli reached what he called the threshold frequency of existence, where sound isn't something you hear, but something you dissolve into. But most who knew Eli no longer say much. They've learned that not every disappearance demands a solution. Some vanishings are simply the echoes that haven't finished fading. The black nylon bag that once hung from a tree branch still sits in the evidence locker. No one knows why it was put there. No one has taken it down. Maybe out of fear of disturbing something. Or maybe because deep down, someone believes that if Eli ever returns, hell no, he was never truly forgotten.